Priyank, hi, good to have you with us. How have you been?
Doing great. Yeah. Thanks, Ashu, for having me here. Thank you.
Priyank, this is an exciting discussion. This is also an important discussion. And largely for all the good work that you've been doing, in basically empowering co-working spaces, physical real estate,
Mhm.
right? Getting a digital side to them, right? And I think in the last 2 years, that's just become so much more important. And, that efficiency is just so much more important. And I think organizations, especially real estate players, I think have realized the criticality and need for ensuring that there's a digital parallel to what they offer in a physical environment, right? And I think you're at the forefront of kind of leading that change, empowering these, large players, to extend digital services, right, to the clients and to many businesses that are operating out their infrastructure, right? So this becomes an interesting conversation in that sense. But before we do that, right, before we get into the nuances of that, and before we getting into understanding a business model better, I think what I'd love to start this conversation with is a quick round of introduction, where we talk a little more, or you talk a little more about some of the things that you've been done in the past, right? Your personal experience, work experience, right, and from there we sort of take on this conversation.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks for having me here. Uh, I think I'm in this entrepreneur world from last 10 years now, and has made a couple of investments, have been understanding the space, and interestingly, it's going really well by now.
Right.
So I think post my MS, I was very keen on something to do, on my own, because being from a Jain family, we generally have a sort of a thought
Right.
process of doing a business. And most of
Right.
my cousins are in the business. Even my dad is in railways, but most of the cousins are in the business. So we understand the metrics of the things very well. It's there
Right.
in the blood in that stuff. So the journey started from there. I came back, and in Bangalore, I set up a company called Blogbeats.
Mhm.
It's a location-based blogging. We help bloggers so that they can just concentrate on the writing and the content part, technology part, everything we take care of.
Mhm.
Reach to the right audience, giving a wider stuff, making them automation. That was something my first startup was.
Right.
It went really well because it was co-founded by one of my best friend Lokesh Jain. He's also
Mhm.
an ex ISB alumni. Uh, and it really went well. We took it to 20 countries, more than 1 million users. And post that, around 2017, we got an offer from our existing investors to have an exit, because they have to have some strategically wanted to go ahead in the US market, and we were not
Right.
aligned in that way. So we thought, like, let's go and give it up,
Mhm.
and made a successful exit there. Post that, some of the learnings, Ashu, I got it that since we were not a bloggers, we were a techies, both were techies. So we thought, like,
Right.
the best thing, I think, whatever I'll do the next in my decade or so, I'll do something where I have a great vertical knowledge, because building technology is something which is my forte.
Right.
So what I did is I invested in Central India's largest co-working space in Bhopal, my native town.
Right.
My dad was also about to retire in 2018, so I started making up mine, because I'm very close to my family. I've always wanted
Right.
to stay with my family. So so there were two things. One was dad, and another thing was less invest in something which I wanted to understand. So for the
Right.
last 3 years, I think the vertical knowledge of real estate has gotten up in head.
Right.
um, have expanded to around 7 to 8 cities, various different managed offices, working with so many MNCs,
Mhm.
as a client should understand the nuances of how it works.
Right.
And from there, the idea what I'm trying to do right now has come up. I asked with my wife. My wife is also an IT engineer, and also
Right.
from a family which is running the businesses from 1866. So,
Right.
yeah, so I think somebody was there to manage the money well. Somebody was there to support you, in that way.
Right.
So blessed in that way. And
Interesting.
we decided that it's the right time now, post 2020 October or June, something around that, we start building the technology.
Right.
So in the last 1.5 years, Ashu, what we did is we built the technology of workplace. We started with a very
Right.
what a simple question: how can we make workplace better? So that's something which we are trying to do.
Right.
So Urspayce is something, a cloud-based workplace management software, which help any workplace of any size to digitize end-to-end within 15 plus product integrated in it, which solves your entire customer life cycle, your visitors, your admins, your employees. This is the something which we do, and it has come really well now, getting adopted by various different customers across India. A lot of major co-working spaces are looking forward to adopt it for their backend services, so that they can manage, market, and monetize their workplaces very well with us. So that's where we are right now.
Super. But Priyank, when you look at many of the co-working spaces, and in my sense is I think co-working spaces are the first adopters to this entire thing, right? When you actually look at co-working spaces as a market, these are essentially entities which typically have their own ecosystem, right? Because there's just so much more that they do, right? I mean, real estate is just one angle to it, right? They offer many other things, right? Networking, collaboration, events, the works, right? And a lot of them actually gone on to raise capital as well, right? From the market, from the investors, right? And the idea is to build a lot of continuity in the engagement that happens in the physical ecosystem, right? How have you been able to sort of fit into that ecosystem, right, with your application? I mean, I understand you come from a co-working background yourself, right? But at the end of the day, everybody wants to own that ecosystem. I think the values in the ecosystem, right, that you're kind of creating, right? How do you fit into that zone?
So we are actually the backend for them. We are not coming in front of them. We are the backend of them. We are trying to make them productive. We are trying to make them more experience they can offer to their customers and their visitors. So that's what we are trying to do. So we have all sort of technology behind for them, which they are doing it, either they're building a community, doing any events, giving some offers, setting up right types of services, all this stuff is being embedded very well in our system. So it's like a plug and play for them, so that they can just embed and they can start it. It's completely API based, completely
interesting.
So whatever technology they might be using.
Interesting. So I mean, I think I think it'll possibly a fair comparison to call it an AWS for co-working spaces, right?
Yes, you can.
Where you continue to manage your front end, right, and the back end is kind of taken care of by your spaces, right? I think that's an interesting take on solving this sort of a big problem, right?
Yes.
Before I jump into Priyank, COVID related question, right? And I think COVID has been a real big dampener, right, to the entire real estate industry, right? But and commercial real estate industry, office spaces, so on and so forth, right? But before I come to that, right, what I would love to understand is, when you talk of what you do, right, you're essentially then a B2B business, right? You're essentially empowering many of these guys. But do you continue to be a player which offers a white label solution, or you essentially operate independently, right, with your brand in the front? The consumer facing side is you, the consumer acquisition that happens. So in a way, what you're creating is a much larger universe, right? Because say, for example, a 91 Springboard or an office, or say a Beehive or WeWork, right, will continue to thrive in their own ecosystems, right? Are you creating a super layer on top of that, or are you a layer under these players, right, which is just empowering them? The ecosystem continues to be owned by them, right? What's your position on that front?
I think yesterday, Vivek, I was talking with Asia Tech General Guyana, so founder, and he pointed out a very great thing. I think we're building an OS for them.
Right.
It's like an operating system where they can build top of it anything what they want.
Sure.
And it's an infrastructure in a way, which them help them to empower their businesses, grow their businesses in the right time with the right technology. Right. So I think we have solved the workflows in a very efficient manner, which will help them to increase and grow their productivity very well for the teams and digital experience for their customers. I think that's the basic difference we are bringing in the ecosystem, and everyone will thrive. Every community will thrive. It's like that we are doing.
Interesting. And so I get your point, right? I mean, you are largely into empowering these brands and these players rather than create a super layer, right? And I think that's a fair point that you kind of made in this one.
I'll give you example. There are a lot of things where even this bigger players does not able to provide the digitization to the end journey, like a vendors or people who have, who are providing, even them, we have a solution where, they can be part of this digital journey and everything can happen so smoothly and so fastly. So that's something we are focusing on. Yeah.
Very interesting. Priyank, COVID has been a very unreal sort of an event, right? A lot of these players have gotten disrupted, right? And how? And I think 2021 towards the end of it, the expectation was that things are getting back to normal before Omicron came in, and that's again we're almost talking of a lockdown, right? Or a borderline lockdown, right? What that essentially means is that what we possibly thought till 2021 is not necessarily a lasting change, is now looking like a lasting change, right? Which what that essentially means is that the nature of how we work, right, or the way we've set up our systems, right, is going to change forever. Real estate is going to become inconsequential over a period of time, right? What does that changes your role into? This also is connected to my earlier question, right? Because when you talk of what you do, your narrative is that you're essentially empowering many of these brands, right?
Yes.
The point is, going forward, a lot of these brands might not be at a scale that they've aspired to, right? In a pre-COVID era, organizations will continue to digitally engage their people, their resources, all of that, right? 60-70%. A lot of large organizations actually gone out and said that 60-70% of their workforce is always going to be work from home, right? And that's a huge cost saving. Right? Is that a shift in your role, in your position? How do you envisage your engagement, your relationship going forward?
I have a very different opinion on this. I've seen the industry in the co-working space because I've been even investing in my co-working spaces, so I understand that stuff.
Sure.
I think co-working space is actually the COVID has actually a blessing in disguise for the co-working space. Mark my word, this, because now the bigger companies, even I was talking to Amlendu from Urban World yesterday.
Sure.
And they are now, in this last 1 year itself, now they're reaching to 5 million ARR. So what we have seen is the managed offices and the co-working spaces. Now companies have started moving even more to the co-working spaces because they wanted a proper infrastructure to be managed by somebody who has expertise in that. So they are moving with that sort of a culture where the offices and all those stuff. So that even co-working is getting more and more in demand in that way. Even if this Omicron has come up, it has not impacted that much because a lot of deals have been signed in last 3 months. Yesterday, I was talking to Abhishek also from CRE Metrics, and we are in the same way. It's going more beyond. And for us, we have to bring better technology so that it makes more safer world. It makes the adoption rate more higher of the consumer. That is something we are trying to concentrate on in a technology.
Interesting.
It's helping that.
Priyank, we work with many large enterprises, right? And I think in our position happen to know a lot of leadership in very large enterprises, right? Now, when of course, and I understand where you're coming from, right? That co-working is here to stay.
Yes.
I think the narrative's kind of changing, right? But I think there is, while of course there are numbers that support what you're saying. When you talk of leadership, right? People who've had independent spaces, right, which have been their spaces, they've been designed in a certain common way,
correct,
are not necessarily comfortable in a shared ecosystem, right?
Correct.
And that possibly, so even if, for example, these organizations are going to go back to going physical, right? Once we're beyond this phase of Omnicron and the damage that Corona, for example, has done, a lot of these enterprises are going to shift back to their own spaces, right? I think co-working adoption is possibly a temporary arrangement because, like I said, right, this is massive cost saving in many ways. I think, once you get beyond this, organizations are going to go back. And I think that's something which is very clear across leadership, right? Of course, the requirement of space is going to be much lesser. It'll possibly be 1/7, 1/6, right? But I think a lot of these organizations are going to go back, right? But that said, right, I think there's still a play for technology. Right? I think technology will empower and enable a lot of this, right? Which brings me to my next question. When I look at the stack that you offer, Priyank, it's a fairly diverse stack, right? You're essentially a super app in many ways,
Yeah.
right? Where you're not just, for example, enabling very elementary pieces, right? Like check-in and check-outs, but
Mm.
you're pretty much doing a lot of other things, right? I mean, you're taking care of inventory
Yes.
within the setup, right? You're taking care of invoicing, parking, bookings, visitor analytics, CRM support. I mean, you're doing pretty much all of that, right? Banking to a great extent, right? I mean, there's much
Yeah.
more to what you're doing, right? This is very, very serious, right? This is not, like
Yes.
I said, a check-in check-out system, right?
Correct.
Tell me a little more about that construct, right? And is this list going to be expanding as we go along? Where are you on that front?
Yeah, I think it will be with the smaller features, not with the products. Features are regularly updated by the client. So how it happened actually is when we started working with one of the MNCs called Vedanta Group Sterlite, they are the leading backbone of Geo, Airtel, and all the telecom industries. So they supply the fibers and the cables and all those stuff. So what and this has all been built that way. If you see, when a company, an MNC who wanted to manage, so they have around 39 offices in India right now, and they have been divided into regional, some are project based, some are state wise, and some are and the headquarter wise. So this is how the MNCs has been structured. So whenever they get projects, either they switch to a co-working space, or either they go to a their admin hunt for a space. Now the problem statement which we help them out majorly, seeing all the product line, is bringing all these stakeholders. Their stakeholders are vendors, their stakeholders are employees who are working, and their stakeholders are visitors who are about to come for the meeting. All this stuff, when you see a proper workflow, then you need these products to be getting into that to make them digitized journey. So if you break any of those, or if you don't have it any of those, then there is a loophole is there, and the digitization does not achieve that way. So if you wanted to achieve your transparency, if you wanted to achieve a productivity, if you wanted to go, having a growth in that way, it helps them. So now Stellite, from they have an office in Gurgaon, where their national head admin sees in a single dashboard all the 39 offices, their support tickets, their visitors who are coming, their bookings are happening, what the consumers are happening, what's the expenses happening in different forms. They can have a budget, they can shoot their the tasks. So this is how what we have structured way. So same way, when a co-working space and enterprise comes, they also need to have an enterprise ready solution. And that's why if you see, either it's a 91 Springboard or a VWork, or let's assume recently, I think SmartWorks has invested for 25 million, what we are doing. Just for their building, they have spent 25 million. So why don't a co-working space or a bigger MNC will have a subscription-based solution? Why to invest their own stuff? Because everyone can't build this heavy technologies on together. So that's how we are having a perfect fit, why people are choosing us in that way. And we are helping them out in that stuff.
Very interesting. Very interesting. So, Priyank, I mean, I understand the realistic side of it, right? But I think what is also very, very critical in the entire scheme of things is the possibility of collaborative play. I think,
Yes.
we kind of established through a course of conversation, right? That real estate might not necessarily be, for example, say requirement of real estate, right? Physical real estate is kind of decreasing, right? If not
Yes.
diminishing, it's kind of
Yes.
decreasing, right?
Yes. Yes.
Hopefully we'll be beyond these times of corona. Hopefully things will get back to normal, right? Hopefully real estate will be consumed the way it was possibly,
Correct.
right?
Correct.
But till then, engagement, for example, is going to be very, very important, right?
Yes.
uh, when you look at engagement, right, there are many, many collaborative products that are now out there, right? I mean, you have Zoom and you have Microsoft, meetings, and like many other, right?
Correct.
You have platforms like Flock, you have Slack, right? There are many, many collaborative tools, right, which are essentially organizations were anyway using these
Correct.
applications, right?
Correct.
A lot of workflow management was essentially moving there, right?
Correct.
They give you all the permutation combinations possibilities, right?
Mhm.
It had pretty much all the features, right? Be it dashboard, be it notifications, right? All of it.
Yes.
Uh, how do you intend to tackle that, right? Because that's, I mean, is there a strategy around, building your own play, or the strategy is more sort of, uh, say, realistic, saying that these organizations are already using something. They might not necessarily move to other ecosystem. There's
Yes.
a certain
Yes.
practice that they do, and we
We,
sort of
hmm.
enable that
we
in
are
a
doing
way.
the same thing. We actually understand this very well, that when somebody is comfortable, they will use it,
Good.
irrespective how best solution you have built. So what we have, and also we also are very much aligned in a thought that if somebody is expertise in something, have built something in amazing software experience, then that should continue.
Sure.
So what we have done is I said, like, we are a completely API based stuff. We have an entire 1,000+ integrations are already getting in. So various different integrations we are putting in. I'll just give you one use case. Okay. We have a solution for incoming deliveries where all your deliveries can be managed. Okay. But for outgoing deliveries, we have tie up with Picker. So Picker is integrated inside stuff, any has to be go. And then now Picker doesn't need to spend a CAC for their new customers or for the existing stuff, So this is just one example. Let's assume another use cases. I think you know Kaizat from Swell, right? They are building some amazing live video commerce for the real estate as well, right? Now for that stuff, we are not building that up because we'll give them integrations. So fairly, where some amazing software companies are already existing and enterprise are using, we're giving them an integration so that everything can come in the single dashboard and then can be used. So that's how we are doing, and the entire ecosystem will be integrated in that way.
Interesting, but Priyank, doesn't that limits your role in many ways, right? Because like I said, right, I mean, eventually everybody wants to own the piece of engagement, right? And going forward, like I said, right, I mean, going forward, the ecosystem that we're kind of talking of is largely going to be digital, right? So doesn't that limits your role in many ways? Because, like I said, right, real estate is requirement of real estate and management of real estate, right? I mean, when you look at it, right, there's just so many more inefficiencies, right? For example, you have to have 20 vendors and so on and so forth, right? Yes. A lot of that is now not required, right? Is that in a way something that bothers you, or not really, right? Because you possibly have a task cut out for yourself that you are into acquisition. But what that also means is there are many other players. There are many other softwares that are also available when it comes to asset management, right? Real estate asset management, right? And they've been adopted for donkeys of years, right? What I would love to understand is what's the incentive for these players, right? And these companies that own these large assets, right? So switch out of those ecosystems. What's your thought on that?
I think the most integrated solution what we have built is something a USP we have. Everything is interconnected. Even just for example, you send me a request of that we have a meeting right now here. If this meeting would have been any co-working spaces, it would have been linked there. Secondly, if as a visitor, all your compliances, all your passes, everything would have been taken care of before coming there. What are your preferences and choices of food or a snacks you've taken in your coffee session, that has been taken care of well. So what we have done here is the most integrated solution in that way is something that we are offering. And believe me, the more integrations from other, it actually make your system more robust, Ashu. It actually it gives a company more power to grow. Right. And also as a human beings, as a community, we should help each other in that way. If there is something, then it has to be very well integrated, and person should know that how it should be used. So we are focusing on in that way. So whatever we have built and whatever we are doing, we're trying to change the shift in that. And you rightly said very well, we might ended up 5 years, 10 years down the line as a super app where a lot of things are very well integrated and very well used in our stuff. So if we see that somebody has built up, like for example, the IoT solutions in our cases, there are a lot of, like, there's a company called Blue Semi in Hyderabad. They're a Hyderabad-based startup. So Blue Semi built some amazing IoT products. Believe me, amazing IoT products. Right. And what we are trying to do is we are integrating all our stuff. So all your chairs, you're sitting right now, we are sitting from last 1 hour. Let's assume in this, we'll get a notification itself there that you're going to be sitting in the 1 hour. And in our and as a company admin will see each and every integration of how their people are performing or for their health wise. So imagine that integration level, what we are trying to achieve. It will help organization to get right data. So right now, the workplace data analytics are not being used very wisely. Because it's like multiple softwares are working in our organizations, nothing has been collaborative. And admin have just ended only in the Excel part, not in the analysis part. Where there we are going. So it's a data play more to understand how your organization is performing in various ways. Either it's in the co-working space, either it's your own office, or either it's in a small office, doesn't matter. But you're offering a right experience and you are able to understand the right analytics of each and every workplace, is how it's happening right now.
Super.
And all that.
Very interesting, right? And I think thank you for doing that, right? Thank you for breaking it up. No, Priyank, when I think of what you're doing, for example, right? I mean, I immediately what comes to my mind is MyGate-like solution, right? And there are a bunch of others that have now come in, right? And they're competing very heavily, right?
Correct.
All of what you, for example, are mentioning, right? Be it analytics, be it engagement, right? Be it mapping out all the stakeholders, be it the communication system, right? Be it tracking what's delivered, what's not delivered, right? What needs to be done, so on and so forth, right? MyGate is doing that, right? The only difference is that they're doing it for residential causes,
yes,
right? When it's which in itself is a very, very large market, right? But when you start actually looking at it and when you start breaking it down, right, there are possibly features that they're not available right now, but for example, club level bookings, right? Where you can actually go in a conference room bookings, right? Because now, a lot of real estate that is getting developed is essentially all mixed land use, right? What that essentially means is that I will have one single app on my phone, which is going to be, and I can access pretty much everything, right?
Correct.
Do you think, and I know it's not a fair comparison, it's possibly an unfair question to a large extent, right? But do you think this is some competition that could have similar aspirations like the ones you have? Because I mean, I think every funded company, right? I think they have insatiable appetite, right, for doing more and more and more. What's your sense of it, right? I mean, do you see them or some of the other players seeping into this market, right? Because they already have a lot of that intelligence, right? They have mapped out a lot of those individuals which are staying in these societies, right? They've grown phenomenally. What's your sense of it? How do you look at it? I mean, that or the overall landscape, right? What's your sense of it?
I think we are very focused in commercial real estate. We are not at all focusing on the residential part. But you are absolutely right. Most of the gated communities you are seeing these days will have some residential towers, will have some tech parks, will have some even a mall where stuff. So we accept the housing part. We have covered each and everything. Either it's a retail outlet, either it's a mall, either it's a business park.
Right.
Residential is something which we haven't done. See, community hall we are covering because that has been there. But we don't want it to get into a B2C level because B2C bring fair lot of an expectation in a very different way. When a B2B works, B2B has a very clear SOP how we want it to do. So the challenge, if you might be seeing a lot of ambush these days happening with MyGate of how they are doing it up, and those stuff. We don't want to get into the residential anytime. We want it to be very streamlined. We wanted to go like an AWS way. You understand? Where we keep building a technology for various different people and analytics can be taken care. We wanted to go that way. So it's not like we are using the data. It's actually they are using their own data for all their stuff. So that's the mindset we wanted to give. Otherwise, in terms of MyGate, they're doing everything in residential. Everything. I've seen the product pipeline as well. That is something which can be a downside also, and which can go really, really well as well in some of the things. So we wanted to not get into the residential, and we haven't planned it. I think there's also one startup from AJ, I think the House Monk. They are doing amazingly well. I think they will do pretty well in residential state as well. I think if you know Ajay, might be. So they're doing that pretty well.
Super. Priyank, what I would love to understand is, and thank you for doing that, right? And I think across the last two questions, you've really made your priorities very, very clear, right? And I think India is just too large a market, right? To fear, who's going to eat what, who's going to get what, right? I think there's space for everybody in that sense. And I like the focus that you bring to the table, right? That listen, this is what we're doing. This is what we want to stick to. We don't want to deviate ourselves. We want to digress from what we're doing. That's a core focus area. And that's heartening, right? That's incredible. And that also is a reflection of very serious mindset that, you, your team, and the DNA of the organization is built to solving a very, very focused problem, right? And which is not an Indian problem. It's actually a global problem. Something that I'm going to talk to you more as we go forward, right? But Priyank, would love to understand what are the current numbers like, right? What are the numbers that you're sitting on right now? You I think came right in the middle of pandemic in many ways, right?
It is.
And it's not been an easy run, right? I think
it was the right time to build a technology, not a right time to do a business.
Interesting. I like the way you put it, right? But what are the current numbers like, Priyank? What is happening?
70 companies are using currently. I think this year we are targeting 1,500 companies to onboard.
Interesting.
With something around 200 companies on our paid clients and around 170 company on one of our plans. So we have an enterprise plan stuff also, and we wanted something around 10 enterprise client this year. So we wanted to close something close to around 1 million ARR for this year. That's something very looking forward.
That is very interesting. Priyank, I'd love to understand the geographical spread, right? I mean, are you largely in India right now? What are the cities that you are available in? I would love to understand that.
We started in India, so most of the companies are using even in the smaller city, like very three-tier city, it doesn't matter for us because they are using largely as the entire organization. So we might be crossing around 60 cities by now.
Wow.
In that sense, because they are using, and from next 2 months onwards, we are going to US, and one of the recent senior position leader has been found, where we have just hired an ex Mindtree CMO who has joined us, who's taking us, who has a global ambitions with us, and who is taking care of the global operations of marketing in that way. So I think US and India is something which we're targeting, and in the first 2 years we're targeting the 11 states, the eastern states of the US, and that is something we are going into.
Very interesting. Priyank, we would love to understand a little more about the onboarding challenge, right? I mean, when you talk of real estate, right? In fact, when you talk of anything in a B2B environment, right? There is what you expect in India is many stakeholders, a lot of bureaucracy, and the time it takes, right? And which is forever, right? Things don't convert. In your game, this is also a cost, right? That organizations have to bear. Maybe not in the in say the simpler version of it, maybe the enterprise version, right? But that's something, like I said, right? It takes forever. Businesses don't want to spend money, especially real estate businesses don't want to spend money. They want to kill costs at every single level, right? I mean, the profitability is essentially built on that sensitivity, if I can put it that way, right? How difficult has the onboarding process been, especially around COVID, right? I'd love to understand that. Or COVID brought in an added sensitivity in the admin, for example, right? To adopt to, or the management to adopt to technology much faster, right? How's that been? Would love to understand.
I think it's actually helped us. The COVID has really helped us because adoption rate has gone higher.
Sure.
And one of the key things what we have done, which I don't see any SaaS companies is currently doing in the world right now. If you see a pricing plan, we are not per user, per staff. We are not charging that way. We are per location charging. And first location is free forever. We are doing that way. So, and what helps that is it helps to understand the admin amount of time they have spend on it, because you give a 14-day trial or a 6 months trial. Boss uske paas time nahi hai. Uske paas uski major kaam hai. He has to adopt himself. Once the system adopted in various different stakeholders, the adoption rate of software onboarding goes higher. And what we have done is we have done a PLG where it's an entire product-led growth system. It's not like you will set up and then a demo will happen. No, straight away you get into it. We have seen some use cases where in just 7 minutes, entire workplaces has been set up. In 7 minutes, I'm talking about. We have seen some use cases, and once if somebody stuck it, then our customer support team get into it. And then we have a entire funnel for onboarding in that way. In terms of how are we reaching to the MNCs and the companies, we are more a heavy partnership based. I feel that CAC should go in a partnership level stuff where we share the revenue with them, and that's the way we are heading into each and every stuff. So even we are trying to get into CBRE head, where the entire CBRE portfolios we can get into. So with that model, Ashu, we are reaching out, not one by one. So we are not spending more money on LinkedIn and then the admin will come and that all doesn't work that way. Even in US from the last 15 days, I'm interviewing or I'm talking various different partners who can put up in US, who can sell for us. And that's something I'm very clear, because in this world, your relationship matters, your partnership matters, and somebody who knows the business well or the psychic of their customers knows. I think they will be your best sellers, not the marketers or a B2B people. I feel
very interesting. Very interesting. Priyank, I would love to understand a little more about the enterprise plan, right? I mean, because something very interesting that you mentioned, right? That I am charging for location, right? I'm not charging for number of or head counts, number of people. I'm not charging for any of that, right? I'm charging for locations. What's the pricing there? I mean, because typically when you look at SaaS, right? I mean, it's typically per head pricing, right?
Yes.
Or you would typically say do it basis certain, say if you're doing it in real estate, right? You do it typically basis, for example, floor area, square feet area, right? You bring in certain matrices.
What we have difference here is that when we go to enterprises now, the single word start with enterprises is the customization. When the customization role play comes, there you can have an ACV to $100,000 or $150,000 as well. So same features, we still will go with the same way. If they wanted to have the same way, but if they want their own integrations with the API, I'm just saying we are again going with the AWS way. If they wanted in more and more integrations, you want more team, you wanted more on something, more technology to build in. For example, you give a use case where somebody also wanted, there's an entire tech park which have community hall, which have malls, which have stuff. So this comes a use case of an enterprise in terms of the co-working solution we're trying to offer, or a business park offer. For them, we are spending in that way, and then we are going to charge. So there we are going in a customization integration costing way, not the per user way.
Priyank, one of the things that, again, a very interesting point that you highlighted, right, is that you're in 60 plus cities already and you're serving about 77 customers, right?
Yeah.
Which essentially means that, it's a little over 1.2 customers per city, right? What has been your sense of, say, tier 1 cities and tier 2 cities and tier 3 cities, right? I mean, as a company, you've chosen to sort of be based out of Bhopal, right?
Yes.
And Bhopal is a tier 2, a city which is tier 2, tier 3 city, right? In many ways, which is still coming up the curve, right? Aspirationally, it's there, right? But how's been the behavior in adoption across these cities, right? Because the pricing that you're talking about at an enterprise level can be actually slightly more expensive for a lot of tier 2 cities in the country, tier 2 and downwards, right? Tier 2, tier 3 and downwards, right? For them, right? Doesn't that limits the market for you to primary markets like Delhi, Bombay, Bangalore, Hyderabad, right? Which are tier A, cat A cities, right? Or is there an unfair understanding, right? Because tier 2 cities are, like I said, right? There's bigger infrastructure which is coming up, and they require such solutions, right? What's been your experience on that front?
I feel a different way. We have experienced different. I think tier 2 business parks and people are more adopting technology than what the tier 1 wanted to have. There's a reason, but there is a reason, because the team is not that skilled, which a skill human can take care, in the tier 1 cities.
Right.
So technology helps them like anything. Okay. And since they are new in the market, they rely on the technology so that it helps a lot of problem cases for their team.
Sure.
So that's how the tier 2 is adopting more. In terms of tier 1 adoptions are more in because they wanted to showcase their experiences seamless for their customers. There's a very single cyclic for all these people, all the real estate guys, that they wanted to have the best of the experience for their customers.
Right.
So the mindset is that way, and we are seeing we haven't seen any problems in adoption in our pricing plans. I think it's largely, if you see the competitors we have in the world, even though we are creating a new category, but there are some each in different categories, different products. There are some competitors. We are very, very fairly priced.
Interesting. I think that's a fair perspective, right? I think that's a revelation to a certain extent, Priyank, right? When you say that, tier 2, tier 3 has been faster in adoption of this, the tech that, for example, that you've built, right? Priyank, would love to understand here, what are the next couple of years like, right? We're towards the end of the conversation, right? And I think no conversation can be complete without talking of what are the next 2.5, 3 years are like, right? I mean, you've highlighted, some of your aspirations, right? You want to be in the US market, you want to be in more mature markets. I think you're looking at 1,500-1,600 clients, right? What are the next 2 years like? I mean, if you could break it down on a milestone level, I think it'll be interesting to understand.
I think at least we wanted to cover in the 3 years all the co-working spaces of the India. We still getting from Brazil, we're still getting from Indonesia, and since we are not focusing, but we still getting and we keep giving to them. But in a single way, we wanted to at least have 10,000 businesses onboarded, the B2B companies onboarded, they're using it up, either in a free, paid, or any plan, doesn't matter. And where the active user, we wanted to active user at least 8 hours an employee should be active on that stuff. We're trying to achieve that stuff. If that we can be achieved, then I think the community building problem of either a WeWork or a co-working space, everything will get solved. So the biggest problem of WeWork and everything, even they do build their own stuff, people are not active. So you have to build something which they use it day in, day out for the stuff. Until that, nobody's gonna do it. So they're adopting now or later, but they will adopt us, because that will be a right way for their engagement with the customers and the visitors they are having.
And it saves them a lot of time and resources and effort, right? Which kind of goes in, and very quickly.
And you will see some amazing technology things we will be adding in, and we have a great product pipeline heading in. Some great people are getting into it. I think we wanted to bring even a smaller city, Bhopal, to the shape where something has done to the world.
I will ask you a very interesting question on that one, right? And I think, but I'm gonna, before I do that, right? What are the fundraising plans, Priyank? Would love to understand that, right? Because you bootstrapped it for a reasonable amount of time, right?
Yes.
But you are a founder. You're a second-time founder, right? Who understands the value of fundraising, right? I mean, who understands the nuances of fundraising?
Yes.
What are the fundraise plans like, right? Because for the aspiration that you kind of talking about, you're going to need those additional resources, right? I think paying customer and that behavior shift is something which is going to happen over a period of time.
Yes.
What's your fundraise plan?
I think for the current year, I think we are done close to, we were about to raise around 1 million, but we are close to 500,000 round.
Right.
And the marquee investors have already pitched in, some great angels, all strategic investors who will bring a lot of great value to the company.
Right.
As a founder, I always feel that it's just not about the money they bring in, but it's about the value they bring in. That's the main key. Right. So that is happening. I think in next 6 months or down the line, we're trying to raise 10 million to 50 million round. And I think it's easy achievable the way we are growing. And we have some backers who itself can do, or if some people are coming in a bigger way, we'll pitch them up. So that's something we're trying to achieve. And
Phenomenal, right? Priyank, my last question in our conversation today. And trust me, and how I want these conversations to keep going, right? Because there's just so many nuances and so finer aspects, right, that you can continue to talk of, right, in these conversations, and which could possibly be never ending, right? But my last question to you in this conversation today, Priyank, is that you've chosen, right, and this is more personal, Priyank, is that you've chosen to actually Urspayce is based out of Bhopal, right?
Yes.
Now that's not something that you come across on a daily basis, right? You've taken a very conscious call of doing this out of Bhopal, right? Many founders, for example, right, continue to grapple with this challenge, right? Where do they want to be based out of, right? Natural sort of an answer to many questions is that be in Bangalore, right? Because that's where you have the talent available. If not Bangalore, and if say you're up north or you're North Indian, right, you typically look at say Gurgaon, right? You look at NCR, you look at Gurgaon, Noida, or you look at Hyderabad, right? So these are certain spots, right, which offer some talent, right? You also don't necessarily come across a lot of founders from places like Kolkata, right, which are commercially very, very savvy, which has had a certain lineage. You've chosen to be in Bhopal, right? I'd love you to spell out, say, certain advantages, suggestions, right, for many such founders who come from tier 2 cities, right? But because of certain say fears, have to continue to operate out of larger markets, right? What would that advantage be if you were to say make an advice, a suggestion, right? What would those advantages be?
See, I think the most important thing in life is the balance. And city like Bhopal brings a lot of balance to your life. Lot of balance. Believe me, it's not noisy. It keeps you very focused. And एक हिंदी में कहावत है कि जब तक कोई जरूरत नहीं होगी, जब तक कोई आविष्कार नहीं होगा, आविष्कार की चीजें होती है. So that trust is also there in the city. Apart from that, if I help the founders who are thinking right now that where they should go do it, if your mind is stable and you know what you're going to do, location doesn't matter, but choose a city which will give you more balance. And I feel Bhopal gives a lot of great balance. Your life is very, 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 very good.
Right.
City is as best as any city can have. It has all the things which any urban city should have.
Right.
So and also, if a lot of people talk about, we also have a great office in HSR in Bangalore.
Mm-hmm.
But believe me, most of the people, and my HR is staying in that way, and now they're aligned with me, that most of the techies who are from Bhopal or like the great schools from Campion and Manet and all those stuffs, they wanted to come back. And most of the people, like one of our people joining in next 2 months, he's heading right now IBM Watson,
Right.
worldwide, and he's joining back because he wanted to come back to Bhopal and wanted to live with the family. And
Right.
he's joining us because the opportunity and the type of technology we are building in, it's a great mix for them.
Mm-hmm.
So it's that something I feel that choose something which helps you to work daily, because at the end of the day you just get your 24 hours, and out of that you just get 10 to 12 hours to work. So in that way, if you wanted to achieve, I think home is the best. Nothing beside that.
Cool.
Friends
On that
there,
note,
everyone is there, man. Everyone is just you. Just
on that note, right? I think that's a takeaway, right? I think for many of us, Priyank, I think that balance is very important. Especially when you're wanting to build something, that balance is very important because it gives you time and space to go back and reflect, right?
yes.
You can't be fighting too many wars at the same time, right? I think being based in a city like Bhopal, right, and say a smaller city, right, can actually help you get some very quality time with family, right, which really balances
Yes.
you as an individual, right, and I think continues to support you for being in that race for a much longer period of time, right, because it's a very, very demanding exercise and play in many ways, right? And I think COVID has kind of really disrupted where we should sort of be based out of, right? I think if the city can offer you that comfort, I think that city could definitely be your starting point, right? In many ways.
And also
But
you contribute to your city. Also you contribute to city.
absolutely,
You
and I think
build
that's
your
just so much
city.
more important. That's just so much more important, right? I think
Being an
that
entrepreneur, what we do, we
absolutely
create a change, and that's what we are trying. Even if whatever we have chosen is something,
right.
we're bringing a change in the entire segment. Otherwise, doing a job and earning something good money is the same way,
Right.
So that's something we're
If
trying
you
to bring.
uplift up, you actually contribute to society in many ways, right? When you do that, you're creating a much healthier ecosystem. You're creating prosperity and possibilities for
Yes.
people, who are
Yes.
there in that
Right
region, right?
culture, right mix, right people, what they wanted, which people just have some complaints because nobody has did it. So somebody
Absolutely,
has to step in, and then it starts a change. Believe me, Ashu,
it
that
does.
is the way it's go. It just somebody is there, and then things started. And just look at what
Exactly.
Mr. Murthy has done for Bangalore, or with
Right.
Mr. Ajim Premji has done for Bangalore, and now see
Exactly.
everyone is there. So it's just a matter of time, and things keep going. You will see more and more things happening from tier 2 cities. I
I'm
can
hopeful,
assure
right?
this.
I am hopeful, right? I mean, I get an opportunity to speak with many, many founders from tier two cities, and if not, they're not based out of tier two cities, right? But they have that similar ethos, right? They have that value system of a tier two
Yeah,
city, right? Which is just phenomenal, which is heartening, right? At many levels. Priyank, thank you so much for doing this, right? There was a
pleasure is
phenomenal session, and great work that you're doing. I think this is an industry that needed a disruption, right? I think this is an industry which possibly was the slowest when it came to picking up on digitization, but I think COVID has kind of really
yes.
pushed it hard to understand the criticality of technology enablement, right? And I think real estate is just waking up in a very different way, right? I think there's just so much more seriousness around it. Priyank, thank you so much for doing this.
And
It was a pleasure to have you. Look forward to having you much sooner, discussing some very, very finer nuances, right? I think your observations are, like I said, right?
that's something we wanted to do, and I wish all the entrepreneurs bring some values, and SaaS is the future. That's something I wanted to say. SaaS is the future.
Thank you, Priyank. It was fun to have
Pleasure
you,
is
man.
mine. Pleasure is
Fabulous.
mine. And thanks for calling us from Yosef's family, and hope to see you soon. Whenever you come to Bhopal, visit us, please. Thank you so
We will
much.
do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Vivek, also. Thank you.